Tom, thanks so much for giving us your time again. I know that you obviously spreading yourself thin, stretching yourself between multiple full-time jobs as well as webinars, podcasts, and everything else. So we appreciate a little bit of your time today.
Cool, man. Thanks for having me. Obviously didn't say anything too bad in the first one, so you've got me back.
It's always, we always find it valuable and insightful. So again, we just appreciate having you on for a chat. And I know you've started your own podcast, The Leading Conversation, which is, for me, it's been an unbelievable listen. I think the topics you've covered have been really engaging, and the questions that you've asked have obviously been really, really good. So yeah, what have you kind of learned out of your conversations that you've had with some of the guys that you've had on?
Yeah, thanks, Aki and Wayne. Thanks for having me. I think it's just been recording that podcast because, you get an excuse to chat to someone who's thought about sport, thought about leadership in sports, and you do that for 50 to 60 minutes every week. It's just fascinating, and we've been lucky to get some guests, quite a wide range of guests. So we've tried to, it's easy to go and get a guy who's 24 years old and plays for the Proteas, and you probably get lots of listens, but you don't get the sense that he's thought or she's thought things through enough to give you wisdom and something you can learn, So we're probably a bit discerning in that space. So we've tried to get people who have, got a view. And I think by being curious, I've learned that the best are curious. Aki, so many people, and you probably encountered it in your space as well. You get the guy who coaches the under 15Bs, hockey team or rugby team, and he or she, they know everything, They'll tell you about how to win and what have you. And then what I found is listening to the likes of, Eddie Joneses and Matt Proudfoots and Sia Khaleesi's and Eric Simons and these guys, is that they're keen to ask you questions. They're keen to know more all the time. Eddie Jones is an addict of learning. And I think if I've learned anything, it's that curiosity of self, curiosity of others, is one of the central forces of getting better, and to have the humility to want to learn more and be willing to learn more is just absolutely vital, So I would say that's been a key learning for me in this space, amongst other things, But I could go on forever, so I'll just wait for it to hit you. What I've also found fascinating, by the way, about doing podcasts is how you'll get a message from a friend or someone or a listener, and they'll send you a message on LinkedIn and they'll say, geez, I love this podcast. And then an hour later, someone else will message you and you go, yeah, that wasn't my favorite, and how different things hit people at different times and the right time for them, So someone will love, I got a message today, geez, Gary Kirsten, I listened to it 5 times and I've taken notes because it was just fascinating for me. And then someone else said the best podcast, one of the top 5 podcasts I've ever listened to was Gary Kirsten. Then someone else was like, I found he waffled a bit, So you it's so different and so contextual for people. So I think, I don't know if any concept that I would tell you is new. Curiosity, of course I knew about it. Vulnerability, of course I knew about it. Connecting with people, individuals, of course I knew about it. But you get a deeper understanding of it. And I think the surface level, we all know about leadership and vulnerability and connecting with stuff. But it's when it's told stories and you deepen it and you get the understanding and you try and see the world through there.
It's really nice to hear someone like Eric who's got all this experience, and then what I liked about it is you guys seem to have the relationship where you challenge each other. Like Eric was saying, you always question, or you saying that Eric always questions. I think that's such a healthy relationship, and especially in high performance sport, it's not always that easy to get that balance because a lot of times people take it personally. So it's just from your side, how do you build that sort of trust in your coaches or in a high performance environment?
Yeah, not easy. I think first and foremost there needs to be an acknowledgement that those kind of conversations are important. Some people might not see it. Some people might say, see, oh, everything's got to be shanana and we've all got to hug each other and be nice. And then other people might be on the opposite end of the spectrum, almost adversarial, where they believe that we've always got to be at each other's, not throats, but it's got to be hard. And I think there's a happy medium in the middle. I think those environments are fostered when there's respect. So if I respect your competence or I respect your work ethic or whatever, and you and vice versa, then I think we can challenge each other. If I don't respect you and I don't feel that you are worthy of your space, it's that simple transactional analysis. I don't know if you've ever come across it, that I'm okay, you're okay kind of thing. And if you've got two people talking on a level, then I think we can go hard at each other. I also think another way of working, and I've done it in teams I've worked with, is to create a process for it. So a simple process and understanding. So, something we use at the Storm is we call it see something, say something. So we've just shortened it to S4. So we'll say, like, Wayne, in the spirit of S4, I want to just note this. So we'll preface feedback of a challenging nature with that. So it brings it anchors it, shall I say? But it's not easy. It's not easy to have those challenging conversations, and it's difficult. I think in essence it gets led by the head coach or the leader of your system, and if he or she is able to model that and bring that without it being personal, then I think it can work.
Yeah. It's an interesting one, like that, challenging in a team environment. It's like when you're in an environment where it's common practice not to challenge beliefs or not to challenge thoughts from people of a senior position or from the coaching staff. How do you then grow that culture essentially of questioning to enhance the group?
Yeah, I mean, look, you guys have worked in I haven't done an awful. I mean, I've been there and did a very tiny little bit there, but I haven't done a lot. I mean, you need to be mindful of the cultural norms of that space. So to go into a culture that's completely non-confrontational and say, oh, we must confront, you're going to miss the point. So my feeling is to paint a picture of what 10% different might look like. How can you create 10% more challenging conversations if that's what's required, for example, and move it slowly rather than like, oh, no one can do these in this place. Like you're not gonna 180-degree change a culture of a country, of a society, of a way people do things. You guys will know better than I do, but I've been reading Paddy Upton's book, and he talks about tells that wonderful story of Australia playing cricket in India, and India warming up on the they're doing their stretches on the field or what have you. And I think it was Ricky Ponting was the captain at the time, and he's like, guys, we've got to get into them, the Aussies. So they basically they do their warm-up run straight through the circle where the Indian guys are warming up. Yeah. Thinking, oh, we'll show them, mate. And afterwards, Paddy recounts the story that he spoke to MS Dhoni about it. And MS Dhoni was like, Paddy, our guys would not have even noticed that. Because in India, we're so used to living on top of each other that an invasion of space is irrelevant, And it's just such a cool story, just showing the difference in culture, But then again, one must be careful of saying, well, all Indian people are like this and all South African people are like that, and all because it's different. And then you look at a guy like Virat Kohli, who, they almost term, he's the most Australian Indian guy. He's confrontational. He'll challenge you. That's how he is, So I think whilst one must be respectful of cultural norms and seek to understand cultural norms, first and foremost, one mustn't be shy to move and bring your own flavor and shift that 10% in a different direction if you think it's going to help. I mean, Eric Simons, you mentioned it, Wayne. Eric Simons, I think it was Eric that said it. He said, when you go into a new culture, you must seek to understand before seeking to be understood. Yeah. And
exactly, yeah.
You guys will know this better than I will, but just got that's that curiosity, trying to understand how they think, why they think the way they think, and then work from there.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah, that exact thing hit quite. Sorry, Karen.
No, keep going.
Yeah, I was saying that seek to understand and before you're being understood is really hit home when I heard that. And then something Rob's and I were like, okay, maybe that's something we really have to look at to win people over a little bit more.
But it's difficult, isn't it, Wayne? Like, to seek to understand is a vulnerable process in itself, because as a coach, you feel that you need to have the answers and you need to show up well. So suddenly you start asking questions and you're like, why do you think like this? Like, it's a vulnerable process, you know?
Sure.
But that's that curiosity, you know, and if you can reframe the fact that I'm asking questions, I'm being curious, doesn't mean I don't know stuff. I know a hell of a lot of stuff. But I'm curious about you, because I feel that if I know more about you, we can get the best out of each other. It doesn't mean I don't know stuff. I know lots of stuff, but I'm really curious. And that's, if we can drop our ego a little bit around that and get people to understand why we're being the way we're being, then I think we can get value.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's. I mean, you're wanting to make yourself vulnerable in that space in order to get that better connection, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. You know, I mean, I don't think I'm particularly strong in this space. You know, like I always try and show up like I know everything, but like the reality is, the more you work in this world, the more you realize how little you know. I mean, Aki, if you probably realize you were coaching varsity students at a fairly high level at probably 25, 26 years of age. With respect, you probably knew very little. But you come in hot and you're like confident and you're trying your stuff, and then you go up the levels and you realize like, jeepers, I know very little, you know. And then you keep working it out. And I think that's the beauty of it, is that if you can accept that you're always not going to know. I had a conversation with a rugby player today, and I said, like, this concept of being ready for a position it's farcical. Like, what is ready? It's completely subjective. You're never ready. It's like you do grade 8 maths or your first year of high school maths and you don't have a clue. You get to grade 9 and you're like, geez, how easy was grade 8 maths? But then you're in grade 9 and you're struggling with that. You know, you're paying for extra maths lessons. So you're always not ready. And I think that's high performance sport. Like, you're never quite ready. It's always uncomfortable. But you go in there and you prepare as hard as you can and you be as present as you can. And therefore you give yourself the best chance of success, you know? So, yeah, I would ban the word, am I ready? I don't think, are you ready? Are you ready to compete? Which means I'm willing to give myself the opportunity to look like a fool. And I'm also willing to give myself the opportunity to go and find glory. Great. But I'm not sure you're ready.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
that whole Dunning-Kruger effect, and that Rob and I also speak about, like, now that we actually think we do know quite a bit, but like now we realize we actually don't know anything. Even though you've been in this industry for 10 years. Yeah. So it's something we chat about quite a lot. And like, geez, we still got so much to learn, but we've been in the industry for quite a while now. So yeah.
No, and you know heaps. I mean, you know loads more than, some starting guy in athletic performance. You know loads more, but you also like, jeepers, I just don't know. Because I can't.
100%, yeah.
And then you get some fool like me who tries to tell you, oh, why don't you just try this and why don't you just try that? And it's not that easy. You know? I heard a beautiful term today, which it's just so true. Toxic positivity. And they're talking about it specifically in this in current times. You know, people who put this positive spin on everything, you know, like, oh, you know, COVID, oh, it's such a wonderful time because you can learn Mandarin, or you can flip and suddenly get the six-pack you never had, and you had, like, bullshit, man. It's difficult. And you don't feel good, you know, and that's also fine. And like allowing people to experience some difficult feelings and allowing people to go through some pain is also not a bad thing, you know. So yeah, sorry, I segued slightly, but I think it's important that we are willing to embrace the fact that, geez, we just don't know.
Yeah. It's it kind of ties into a concept that I want to talk about in terms of like grit and resilience. Like, the idea is that you've got to go through that vulnerability, you've got to go through that hardship essentially. To get to a point where you come out the other side and you're successful. So what's your sort of definition of grit and resilience, and how important have you found it to be in successful people, whether that's in a high performance team environment or whether it's in a business environment?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think, Archie, my definition of it is probably not that relevant. If people are interested in grit, I would highly recommend they go and read the book Grit by Angela Duckworth. I mean, it's an outstanding book.
Yeah.
I really, really enjoyed it. I'm sure you guys have read it. There's great studies, there's great stories about it. I love the story about cartoonists. So your average cartoonist gets rejected between 90 and 95% of the time. So he or she is they're succeeding, like they're never succeeding, you know. So they'll do 10 cartoons, they'll do 100 cartoons, and they might get 5 put in a publication. Get 5 put in a publication, you know. So you know, the reality is, grit is, can you continuously carry on despite the circumstances, despite your results? You know, you're not getting picked for in our world. You're not getting picked for the team, or you keep failing. You keep coming fourth. You keep missing out on the podium. Can you continue to go? And you know, her whole studies are, it's important for young people to experience grit. So it's important for young people to go through tough times, to experience those and to push on. So she does this thing with their kids. What does she call it? The One Tough Thing Project. And in a year, you have to sign up for one tough thing. So that might be learning to play the violin, or it might be learning to bake, or whatever it is. And the whole premise is that you have to see it through to the end, but you also have to be interested in it. So it's very difficult to be gritty in something that I've got no interest or passion for. Do you know what I mean? So there needs to be some, I believe, to show grit, there needs to be some semblance of purpose. And it's way easier if there's some semblance of strength, I think, because we know that progress is a huge motivator. So if I'm doing something where I'm experiencing no progress because I've got no skill or talent or ability in that space at all, I think it's going to be harder to show grit. But I think we all know, having worked in sport, that those guys who hold tackle bags, or those guys who never get picked in the hockey team year in, year out, they're having to display grit to keep going, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There was an interesting thing she spoke about where she used an equation where she spoke about talent multiplied by effort equals skill, and then skill multiplied by effort equals achievement. Essentially meaning that effort is one of the main sort of components to developing grit. So how do you sort of look at that? And I want to tie it into a case study essentially around a player who's got all the talent in the world, has all the skill in the world, but doesn't necessarily have the effort. So how do you then go about building that grit in a player that's already at an international level?
So what stops effort? What's a hindrance to effort? Okay, more specifically, what do you believe stops effort? What about
not enjoying something, perhaps?
Okay, so potentially a lack of enjoyment, sure, definitely one.
A lack of purpose, a lack of a greater sense of why he's doing it, maybe.
Okay, absolutely.
Yeah, because it's almost like progress. A sense.
So I think, you know, like I always use this little model, and I say, like, if someone's battling at something, and this might not be perfectly applicable to grit, but I'll just go with it anyway. I put it down to one of 4 C's. The first one is confidence. If the person, they might appear like they're showing no effort, but actually the source of it is a lack of confidence. So if you think about a little child who doesn't want to look stupid, so he or she won't even try. So they lack confidence, they're fearful, they doubt themselves, but we don't know that. But it comes across as a lack of effort. The second C is competence. So does the person lack the skill or knowledge or capability to execute the task you're asking them to do? The third C is clarity. And Carl Brown said something beautiful to me. He said, Sevens rugby, those guys work hard. I mean, you need to be properly gritty and resilient in that sport. And he said to me, I cannot show intensity if I'm not sure where to direct it. And I think sometimes as coaches, we need to make sure that people know exactly how to direct, direct their effort. And then the last one is commitment. And I think that goes to your point, Archie, is are they committed to a cause? Are they getting energy from why they're doing what they're doing?
Yeah.
So if I've got no competence, it's difficult for me to get progress. So if I'm getting no progress, it's very hard for me to show more effort. So I think it works in it's like a circular model, So if I can get someone progressing at something and I can affirm that progress and I can link it to a greater cause, they're going to get confidence. Then I feel that we're going to get more effort. So I think we must be careful of coaches of saying that everyone who doesn't show effort is because they don't care. I think there are some people who don't care, but I think it's the minority. I think a lot of people who don't show effort haven't fully worked out how to direct their effort. They might have doubts. They might not, what's the point in doing? There could be any number of reasons. And I think that's a skill that us as coaches have to get right, because your average punter on a Saturday watching a game is thinking these oaks aren't trying hard enough.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's the perception that you see from the outside without knowing the person or knowing the person's story.
No, exactly. Exactly. I mean, I chatted to a guy today. He's a rugby player, and his effort is 1.5 out of 10. Pathetic. But once I got chatting to him, and he kept talking about other people, and he kept talking about what who might. I asked him, what position do you want to play? He said, this position. I said, why? He said, because there's fewer people in that space. I've got a better chance of playing. I said, okay, nice, you're doing the maths, but that's not the way to succeed. The way to succeed is to say, where am I at my best? Where am I at my best? And then to go forward and aim high, So for me, and then I listened to him more and more and more, but for me, I was like, this guy just lacks confidence. So I said to him, because then he kept saying, I'm not sure if I'm good enough. So I said to him, okay, I'll tell you what, I will decide if you're good enough. Let me decide whether you're good enough. And let me and my coaching staff help you upskill. In return, can you just give me effort?
Yeah.
That's all we're going to give you effort. Because at the moment, I think his fear of looking stupid and his fear of failure is just blocking out any chance he's got of showing effort. Now that's my theory. I might be proved wrong, but yeah.
I had a stint in China, and trying to get to understand the players better. One thing I wanted to do is what is your why? So I had the translator sit with me, and I just had a chat to every player. And I just wanted to see what is their reason for wanting to play hockey at this level, type thing, just so I could get a better understanding there. And what I found, and what was quite interesting for me, if there was 2 players that told me they played for the love of the game, I was lucky. The rest had various other reasons for being there. It would be to support their family, to whatever it might be. So it was quite an eye-opener for me, because I'd think at this elite level that they're all playing for the love of the game, but it wasn't that. So I had to find a different way to motivate them after getting that information. So it's just something interesting.
So I lost you briefly. So you're saying you're saying they weren't playing for the love of the game, they were playing for support their families?
Yeah, so for various other reasons, there were maybe 2 players that said to me, I really love playing hockey when I was in China, and the rest of them, they had other various reasons for playing. But it was just interesting for me. I don't think it's wrong for them to do it. It was just interesting that I found that out there.
Yeah, but how good of you to just start that conversation and help them grow their self-awareness, which must have been a fascinating process, because once you understand that someone's why, you can understand a little bit more around their behaviors.
100%.
A tool we've been using a lot is the Enneagram tool, which really looks at the core of what motivates someone. And it's been a fascinating process to do with the one particular sports team that I'm working with. We did it with the leadership group, but we do it a lot in the business world. And you can see this person is driven by perfection and getting process, doing the right thing. This person is driven by showing up well. This person is driven by helping people. So that's another way of looking at it. The other side is, wouldn't be tested by Enneagram, but it's just like, I'm playing hockey because I need to support my family. So we see that a lot you see that a lot in South Africa. You see guys coming from poor families, and they're playing rugby or cricket or soccer, and most of that money is going upstream. It's going to their family to buy them a house or support them. Now that sounds nice, it sounds like powerful, and he's desperate, and I'll tell you, it's also bloody scary, because that guy gets a hamstring niggle and he starts to panic. Because the meaning of me getting a hamstring niggle is, I've got a hamstring niggle, I'll be back in 3 weeks. The meaning of that guy's hamstring niggle is, oh my word, what happens if my parents don't have food?
Exactly.
Now that might make him desperate, but it might also make him too desperate. And then he starts to lie, and he starts to conceal his injury, and he starts to lose clarity of what he's trying to do on the pitch, because he's so tense about. You can see where it's going. So I think the fact that you instigated those conversations is powerful.
Yeah. It's interesting. I mean, what you've just said is what we kind of experience a lot now in Asia as well, in the sense that they're playing to support their families. So there is a lot of pressure on them. And just like tying in the whole thing around trying to build that resilience, or using the resilience of the players to try and enhance the group's sort of connectivity and sort of values and all of that sort of stuff. How do you actually take the story of the individual and try and build it into a team collective identity? You know what I mean? So in Asia, we've got athletes that are coming from extremely poor and disadvantaged backgrounds, and they've gone and seeked out this opportunity through their own sort of intuition and become successful. But now we want to use that sort of story in a positive light to try and connect the team.
So what have you done so far?
We've done a lot of sort of workshops around stories. So we've listened to their personal stories. They've obviously told us stories directly to the staff, but then we've also got them communicating their stories to the group as well, so in front of the group. So I mean, that's probably one of the main things that we've done, just to try and get the group understanding each other a lot better, because I think what we've found is that there isn't that sort of level of connectedness. They're sort of scared to share those type of things in open because it's a sign of weakness. So how do you get to that level of sort of comfortability, or actually making them vulnerable but comfortable, to try and grow that connection?
Well, firstly, well done for doing that. I mean, that's not easy, and I think you're probably further along than you think you are, if you're doing those types of exercises. Aki, you know this, like sometimes having those conversations are more daunting than being on the Astra, So actually putting people through those exercises can be powerful in themselves in terms of growing comfort. And also it's quite cool if I've connected with you and we out there in front of 10,000 people playing a test match, like there's that deeper connection. I feel safer with you. So, I might be playing in an away game and people are screaming, but now I feel safe because we've connected more as teammates. I think that's one of the powers of team. I suppose my short answer, two things would be: one is you got to model it yourself, as a leader and as a staff or leadership group, and the second is slowly but surely. So it's like if you want to instigate feedback, like don't ask people to come hard at each other in public straight away if you don't give any feedback. Start really slowly with a very controlled, easy little affirmation session, and then push it a little bit more the next time, and push it a little bit more the next time. And, a little bit like you would do, Aki. I mean, if I'm bench pressing 50 and you want to get me to 60, I mean, it's going to take a long time, but you're going to take me up in increments of 5 every week or whatever. It's the same with that, like connection and feedback and those kind of things. It's the principles don't change. Let people incrementally grow and improve in that space.
What's the theory around like power of story in terms of connecting people, and also just as like a leadership like sort of a method of leadership in terms of trying to get your message across? What's the sort of power in story? I know sort of Pep Guardiola uses it a lot in terms of how he communicates with his players and how he brings these groups of teams together. And I know you also obviously love that story element as well. What is the thing behind it?
Yeah, I mean, I think the reality, Archie, is that we are human beings are story makers. So we see something, or we seize data, and we collate it in our brains unconsciously into mini stories, or I think they call them heuristics, you know. So we create these little narratives, and every single person has. So I often say, like, think of, I call it the triple story, right? So the first layer of the story is, what is your actual story? Like, where do you come from? Where was your background? How were you brought up? What are the things that have changed and shaped your life? It's a wonderful exercise to do. Like, ask people to do a timeline and put the five most significant moments of their life on the timeline, and share that with the team or with a mini group, you know. So that's the first story. The second story is what I would call my story. So that's my narrative. It's how I view the world. So it's my beliefs about something. So my story might be that well, I shared an example earlier. My story about that rugby player is that he doesn't lack effort. He lacks confidence. That's my story. I don't know if that's my narrative about it. You might have listened to the same conversation, Archie, and thought completely different. But that's my story about it. So that's the second. And then the third layer of the story is my future story. So what's the story that I want to write, or I want to be part of going forward? Yeah. So that's the triple story, which doesn't answer your question. It's just laying the platform. So I believe that because we are creating stories and thinking in stories all the time, it's a great way to then make messages and bring concepts across to shift mindsets, you know? So if you can tell a story, people can relate to it. They can connect to it because they might have experienced something similar, or they might find it aspirational. So I think telling stories is just way more powerful than throwing up theories. You know, a stat can work and a model can work. But I think when you're telling a story with a stat and a model and asking a question, that's when you're truly shifting people, you know? Yeah. So yeah, I mean, some of the best leaders I've been with are great storytellers. And some are pretty crap, actually. But it doesn't mean they're bad leaders. They just then don't use that technique, you know?
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah.
That's to ask you, because if I look at myself, I'm quite a private person. So for me to be a good storyteller and tell this great story about my life, it's not that easy. But like something that us, Robs and I at APA, what we try to do is always say our slogan is human first. So like, yeah, we want to make better athletes and whatever, but in the end, everyone's a human being. Everyone has feelings, everyone has emotions, family problems, and this and that. So I think that care factor for like, that's what I feel that is quite important. And I think once wherever you're working with, could be in business, I suppose, or for us specifically with athletes, if they know you care, I feel that you get this buy-in as well. So I'm not sure what you think of that sort of approach, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose what I think there, Wayne, is that you've got to use your superpower, you know? And if your superpower is not telling a Churchillian story or Al Pacino in the change room, then don't use it, you know?
Yeah,
but if
exactly.
your superpower is being able to listen to someone and show care through listening, use it. You know, I like personally, I like to tell stories and anecdotes. I enjoy it, doing it. And I think that's the way that I can connect with people. Sure. That's my power. I don't want to call it a superpower. I don't think I've arrived at it. That's my power, you know. Your power or superpower would be listening. And I think we've got to find our own way of finding out someone's story.
Sure.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing that you're talking about, that triple story, because it's essentially what we've actually tried to do is link their past to where they are currently to the future. So we're trying to create a story in the sense of linking it to the goal that we want to achieve, which is the Olympics next year. But trying to link everything from the past and try and bring the collective together. You know what I mean? We obviously know that the collective can be stronger than the individual. So yeah, it's actually quite interesting that you said it like that. It's a nice way of framing.
Yeah, man, I think Archie, you know, like with a lot of teams that I try and do, like we'll often try and come up with a theme. or for a campaign, you know, like, and use imagery and use storytelling behind it. I watched the webinar the other day, this lady at the West Point in America, you know, the army place, and they've got 7 values. And someone asked, like, how do you, in fact, I might have even asked, I can't remember, but like, how on earth do you have 7 values? Like, how do you keep those 7 values alive? And she said, just through storytelling. Like, we're just telling stories about those values all the time, you know. And so sorry, once again, I segued. I think building a campaign, so like, you want to win the Olympics, you want to win gold, like, cool. So the 8 teams. What is that narrative that you can build up that is almost more than winning gold, that people can buy into and connect with as human beings? You know, that's what I've tried to do. I think you've seen, you know, and like things that we've done before, some of the coaches that I've worked with, and I've seen them do it really powerfully. You know, with the Stormers now, our whole thing is called Get Cape Town Smiling. And it's really like, you want to be this aspirational body for the people of Cape Town and beyond, you know, like where people look up to you. And it's, you know, and smiling's cool, it's like a nice subtle word, but and then we've got 2 values that we've just come up with around Get Cape Town Smiling, and you build that all the time. So of course you want to win Super Rugby, of course you want to win the Currie Cup. But what's unique to you? What's unique that people can connect with and they can see Get Cape Town Smiling, which for one guy might be his granny and his grandpa, you know, sitting at home, watching the TV, throwing the remote there on a Saturday. Another guy might be his dad who's had a season ticket for 40 years. Another guy might be the guy who went to Paul Boys or went to Bishops or Rondebosch or something like that. And he thinks about those lighties who are at his school and they're watching him as a hero, you know. So like, everyone can connect to that Get Cape Town Smiling in their own way. And then you just keep telling stories about it, and you keep bringing it alive, and you keep talking about what it is to make people smile, and what have we done, so, you know. And it's quite a cool way of keeping that thing alive.
I love
which
that.
I'm sure you guys are doing and probably know anyway.
Yeah, I love that. That's awesome. The same as what Skulk Brits was saying today on your podcast, in the sense of Saracens, where the first thing they were told was like, we're going to make memories. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. There was nothing about sort of winning. It was all about just creating that environment around the performance, you know. So they were connecting to something else.
They were connecting to something else. They're connecting to an idea, you know. And I mean, you know, you guys will know the Simon Sinek thing, you know. People don't buy what, they buy why, you know. And so like, if you can connect human beings to this cause, to something greater than themselves, sure, I think there's power in that, you know. And that's our job as leaders, is to help people connect and see that through whichever way we do it. You know, some of us will do it through storytelling. Some of us will do it just through the way we are. You know, Aki, I know you've got a work ethic second to none, you know. So people might buy into the idea of working hard and satisfaction because they see you, and they, you know, you showing leadership through your actions. And people buy into that idea, and then they follow that idea. Like, you're telling a story just through your actions.
Yeah. It's interesting because it's something I think Gary Kirsten said in your guys' podcast, where he was like, what is he going to come in and teach Sachin Tendulkar, for example?
Yeah.
Could do is really work through throwdowns for hours and hours and hours. And that's how he got their buy-in, is by just having this huge work ethic and knowing the players seeing this. And then that's how he got that buy-in. So it's, I think it's really important.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think we're probably going to run out of time soon. Wayne, do you have anything else to ask Tom?
No, it's just thanks for your time. It's been awesome, really intriguing just listening, and really enjoying your podcast. Keep it up.
No, thanks, man. Yeah, thanks for guys for listening. It's much appreciated. One more. We'll do one more next week with just Kyle and I, and then we'll take a bit of a break. Seems like the sort of way is that you do seasons, you know. So we'll do season 1, and then we'll have a couple of months off, and then carry on. But yeah, shot for listening. I'm glad you guys are enjoying it.
Keep the people intrigued.
Yeah. Well, or we just need to break ourselves, you know. I think. I also think you don't want to just churn stuff out, you know. You want to make sure that everyone is quality, or as best as you can, you know. So
Yeah.
Sometimes less is a bit more, you know.
Yeah.
That's my story about it.
One last question. Just, is there anything over the last few months, 6 months, 8 months, that's come up that's sort of challenged any of your conventional beliefs around creating successful teams or leading high performance teams that you think is now you've sort of taken on board and might change something going forwards?
Sure. I don't know if I've 180'd on anything, but there's definitely things that have like come smack me in the head. Clarity.
Yeah.
Clarity is, do people really know what we're trying to do and what we really expect of each other? Or do we talk around it? I'm not convinced that clarity we get right. So that's definitely smacked me in the eyes. Archie, connection. Like, think about it like this, right? You've got a team. You got to get the blue stuff right. The blue stuff is relationships, connection, all of that stuff. You've also got to get the red stuff right. The red stuff is standards, driving, performance, targets, effort, recovery, all that stuff. Punctuality. I think I've realized that you got to get both right. Yeah. Not one and the other. And your team will, based on your leadership of your team, will be prone to one or the other. You know, so if your leader believes more in the blue side or more in the red side, you try and work hard to use your team and your diversity in the group to get balance in those things and drive both of those. I think that's really hit home for me. Like, if you can get both of those things right, I have to believe that there's success in that, you know. So that's really hit me, amongst like a million other things, to be honest. And I suppose I'll finish with how I started, because you want to get rid of me now. But
trust me, I could listen to you wherever. So.
No. To really, shit, and I don't get this right. Really try and be curious. Like, really try and sit our egos down for a while and just try and find out a little bit more. Like, understand and grapple with it. And you don't have to have the answers all the time and be able to put the PowerPoint up and say, yeah, I got you. Like, ask, not understand, grapple with it, think about it, and then create your own narrative or IP around that. So that's 3 things. Get the blue and the red balance right. I don't think people have got clarity, and we've got to stay curious, and we've got to keep asking and finding out stuff and borrow from places. You know, Eddie Jones is not interested in rugby. Eddie Jones goes to army, soccer, AFL, NFL, and he borrows ideas from them. And I love that.
So, yeah, 100%. Yeah. How do you go around building greater clarity then?
Ask yourself first, what do you actually want?
Yeah. So remain curious.
You know what I mean?
Clarity.
Shit, like, do we even know as leaders? Do we really know what we want? Like, ask yourself crystal clear. You know, one of the best rugby coaches in the world is a guy called Brendan Fenton. And he's working at the moment with the Stormers. This guy's unbelievable to watch. He'll sit for an hour and a half with 4 players and discuss the tiniest detail. But he knows in his head that at the end of that, there will be absolute clarity. But he's happy to go around and put it in the cement mix and talk and throw ideas out and stimulate. But at the end of that, absolute clarity. This is what we are going to do, and we're going to do it on a repeat over and over again. So I think that's the first step, is just ask yourself, what do you want? And probably ask the players, so what do you need from me, you know?
Cool. Yeah. Awesome. Thanks so much, Tom.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for staying up so late.
Absolute legend. Thank you.
No shot, guys. Appreciate it. Good luck.